Hi, Gemini. Welcome to your October 2019 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So if you're looking for love, I think that you have found a great month. And even as I record this at the end of September, there is similar energy also here, because I'm actually recording this on the night of the new moon in Libra. Libra is your fifth house of romance and creativity. And actually, Libra is a fellow air sign, so it forms a trine with you, Gemini, and it's a very pleasant and positive energy flow. So basically what it means is that when you trine a fellow air sign in some kind of a transit, it can make manifestation that much easier. So as the month of October begins, the sun is in this fifth house. The other thing about the fifth house is it's a house of pleasure. It's a house of fun. So parties and games, sometimes sporting events, plays, anything creative, performances, going to concerts. This is all featured as well. If you have a date, all the better, because then you have the love angle as well. And you may be romantic now, there might be somebody that you're interested in, or you're on the market and you're looking for someone. If you're already taken, this may influence you in terms of an artistic project, for instance, and you can feel that sense of joy, like the big kid in you. Leo rules this house in the universal chart, and so it's like you are embodying the qualities of Leo when the sun is in your fifth house, the playfulness and what have you. On the 3rd, Mercury goes into Scorpio, and this begins a foray into the 6th house, where there is a lot of opposite, I would say, types of things going on from the 5th house. For instance, the 5th house can be the business that you own, and the 6th house can be the workplace. So if you have co-workers, as opposed to working for yourself. The 6th house is the house of work, service, volunteering, your health, daily habits, your daily schedule. It's the house that Virgo rules in the universal chart. So it's very practical and organized and regimented and just very even perfectionistic. And Mercury going into this house, Mercury rules the 6th house. So it can indicate being very fastidious about diet, maybe reading about diet, because this is part of the 6th house and Mercury. And on the same day, and just thinking about things, maybe thinking about your health. What can you do? Brainstorming and researching in books what you can do. Or perhaps you're communicating with a particular place of employment. On the same day, on the 3rd as well, Pluto turns direct at 20 degrees of Capricorn. Now this, Gemini, is your 8th house. Pluto rules the 8th house, along with Mars, the two planets that rule Scorpio. Pluto in the 8th house, wow, that's pretty intense. And when it was retrograde, talk about shadow work on steroids. So I'd be curious to know from the average Gemini how the last 5+ months have been. I think it's been, it was in April. I think I looked this up. May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, about 6 months. How have they been? Have they been kind of like rough for you? Gemini, has there been a lot of heavy emotional stuff that has come to the surface for you, because this is very much purging. When somebody has Pluto in the 8th house in general, let alone when it was retrograde. Now that it's direct, let the transformation continue, but maybe not as, thoroughly or brutally as it has been happening. And it could even be, the 8th house is death. If you had to deal with a death that really kind of just took a lot out of you in 2019, particularly in the last 5 or so months, that may have even reminded you of something that before that was another abandonment or feeling of abandonment, and you had to kind of like exorcise it from your life to some degree. On the 4th, Mars goes into Libra, that 5th house. Mars is aggressive. It can be like very assertive. Aggressive means too pushy, but assertive means confidence. And that could certainly be that you're confident that, you have the sun in this 5th house. So you may be a little bit cocky that there's somebody who likes you back, and you're pursuing them very directly, unapologetically. Mars is a sex drive, and the 5th house is recreational sex, so maybe that's going on. I don't know. But I think there's a romantic angle because the sun is here. It's not just about getting some. It's about perhaps pursuing someone very emphatically or enthusiastically. This can be great for artists who are just like driven to complete a piece that they're working on, perhaps. Again, the new moon has been in here. I'm recording it on the night of the new moon, the end of September. On the 8th, Venus goes into Scorpio, that 6th house. So Venus has actually been in that 5th house. I was thinking in terms of just the sun, but Venus has been in there as well. So that does indicate a romantic attraction before the physical attraction, which is always good. Now Venus is in the work sector, and this can mean a raise. This can mean if you have recently gotten hired, that now you're making money again. This can be for some single people that you find love in the office. It can be harmonious for relationships with coworkers. On the 13th, we have a full moon at 20 degrees of Aries in the 11th house of hopes and wishes and friendships. For some Gemini people, you may find that you have come as far as you can go. Is that good grammar? I don't know. When it comes to a particular friendship or maybe even a group of friends, I do think that is highly possible, because when you have Pluto transiting your 8th house, which, by the way, is a once-in-a-lifetime transit, and not every person is going to have, I would say, the privilege of this particular transit. It's funny, I'm really building this up, but I realize now that I have this myself. But now my Pluto is in the 9th house. And I mean, if I went and traced back when Pluto was exactly in that 8th house, those years, I don't think it was like the toughest thing, but it would be interesting to go back and see exactly when it was there. Because I guess it depends, if you have planets in your natal 8th house, like I have the sun there, and perhaps that makes it a lot easier because you already have the personality traits like that. But regardless, even if you have the sun or moon Gemini in the 8th house, as it is, you can't, I know I'm kind of confusing people because it depends on if you're listening to this for your sun in Gemini or your Gemini rising. So it's the solar versus the natal chart. But in any case, for some of you with friendships, you may have outgrown your friends. And this may be attributable to the Pluto transit in your 8th house, where you are really kind of like purging so much in your life. An example would be, because the 8th house can be like compulsive behavior, like addictions. 12th house can be too, but the 8th house can certainly be those bad habits, and that we would file under obsessions. And this happens quite a bit, that when somebody does decide to get sober, they no longer can hang with the same group of people, because if those people are using, they don't have that in common anymore. So if there's anything like that, where you have kind of gotten away, another example would be a Gemini person who used to be more of a criminal, because Pluto rules the underworld and that kind of, what would we call it? It's not a secret society, but just the underground economy, whatever you want to call it. But those kinds of things that people do that are not, they're kind of underhanded or what have you. And you decide to kind of go on the straight and narrow. And yet you have friends, maybe back from when you were growing up, who have not grown and who are still doing the same old, and you have to distance yourself from them. And you realize at this full moon, perhaps, that they're not good for you and you have to part ways. And so that may just be a realization you have. You may not take action yet, but just understanding that can be a lot of the steps it's going to take to fully enact it. This can be realizing a long-term goal that you've had. So that can be very satisfying. Then on the 23rd, the sun is in Scorpio in that 6th house. And you become less fun and games and more down to brass tacks, as I always say. You kind of morph into a Virgo. And, that means that for a Gemini person, you have to rein yourself in. You have to become more regimented and less fly, by the seat of my pants. On the 27th or 28th, depending on where you live in the world, we have a new moon in Scorpio at 4 degrees of Scorpio in that 6th house of health and work. And this is really a good time. This is right before the Mercury retrograde. So there's a chance that you may change things up, which is okay. Change is fine. Tweak, maybe even. But this is a great time during the new moon to start experimenting with maybe changing your daily routine. If you work from home, this becomes very crucial, and you do have planets in the 5th house, which can be the business that you own. So you may want to experiment, like for instance, if you find that it seems hard to get things done because there are always distractions, you may decide to get up an hour early, and that, or even 2 hours early. And perhaps that makes all the difference in the world about productivity. And maybe you vow that you're just going to chug away for the morning and going into the afternoon, and then you have the rest of the day to yourself. Like, get all of the things that you need to get done on the front end of things so that you have that to look forward to. And experiment, because when Mercury goes retrograde on the 31st, it will be at 27 degrees of Scorpio, so it's almost into Sagittarius when it goes retrograde. And Mercury retrograde in the 6th can be a situation where if somebody is trying to get hired, that their application gets overlooked, or whatever you want to call it, lost, or temporarily misplaced. It can be that there is a misunderstanding that you have with a coworker, and that sets off a chain reaction. Maybe, what could be another example? You might be like, I think Mercury retrogrades are great for research. So researching diet-related material or health-related material. Again, you may experiment in different ways, going back to an earlier routine that you had during the day to kind of see if that will work again. Because you're a Gemini and you're a mutable sign, I wouldn't be surprised if Geminis love to change things up anyhow, no matter what they're doing. And sometimes if the Gemini person is too impatient to see results, they may just, jump from one thing to the next, never giving anything enough of a chance. So there might be some experimentation for the first few weeks of November about different ways to structure your day or things like that. Practical ideas, maybe even diet changes. But keeping an open mind that you can change, and maybe even rethinking your diet. If you've been really gung-ho about a certain diet, you may kind of rethink it and say, I wonder if this is really for me. And for the next few weeks in November, you may try something new. But I think that this is particularly a great month for relationships. Especially like ones that are blossoming, and having your dreams come true with the full moon in the 11th house. So that's great as well, Gemini. So I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, I am offering a nice discount on my natal chart readings. You can see the information below to see how much they cost, and you can just read about the details of it on my website, rainamoonastrology.com. Take care. Have a great month. Bye.